Make sure I get this right. Ole, Sven, and Lars die in a tragic lutefisk accident. They're met by God on the stairway to heaven. God says, there are 3,000 steps to heaven. It's very serious up there. I'll tell you a joke on each 1,000th step you reach. If you laugh, you go to hell. So they start walking and reach to the first 1,000th step. God tells a joke. Lars laughs out loud and goes straight to hell. Ole and Sven look out at each other nervously. On the 2,000th step, God tells another joke. Sven tries his best, but he laughs straight to hell. On the 3,000th step, God tells the last and best joke. Ole doesn't laugh and proceeds to the gate. Suddenly, Ole bursts out laughing hysterically. What are you laughing about? Ole replies, oh, that's funny. I just got the first joke. I covered for my brother yesterday. He's in Hawaii. Well, he's Maui. He's texting me all the views that he's seeing. And so I had a funeral at his church yesterday, and the guy was quite a clown. It was funny. So I told my 58 days joke, and they put a puzzle together in 58 days. And everybody laughed, and all of a sudden the lights went down, and they went up, and the lights went down. I'm like, what in the world's going on? So as I'm trying to slink out of it, because God is mad at me. But it was just the guys in the back playing a joke on me. We see that this presents a different kind of a situation. It's fitting, isn't it? A centurion. On Memorial Day, we think about soldiers. We think about those who lost their lives. And we have a centurion who is in charge of many soldiers. And here he's set into a town. He's ordered to be in a town to kind of keep track and make sure that everything's orderly and going well, and that those Hebrews are not getting out of hand. And then we find the centurion, as he's with these people day in and day out, he becomes accustomed to who they are and what they act and how they act and what their religion is and what their faith is like. And pretty soon he becomes acclimated and he starts to feel a love for people. And so he builds a synagogue for them. And he's working side by side with these people, a Gentile, a Roman soldier working with these Jewish people. He even has Jewish elders who are not in favor. Usually in the Gospels, usually the Jewish elders, the Pharisees are at odds with what Jesus says and who Jesus is. But in this case, they come to Jesus with a plea. Please, our centurion has a request, and we love him too. He's shown great love for us, and so we know what he's all about. But the centurion probably didn't want to go through the ritual of becoming Jewish. It probably wouldn't have bode well for his position in the Roman army at all. But I find it interesting that even in this case, that he understands the gospel. He understands the authority of Jesus because he understands authority, period. That's probably the way he grew up. And so when Jesus comes, he understands and gets to know that Jesus is the authority. We find that the Jewish elders and the Jewish people have a hard time with that because maybe they have so many traditions that they just can't comprehend. Maybe, for us, we have this rich Lutheran tradition, most of us, that if Jesus were to come, and we may not be open to what he has to tell us because it may be a little bit outside the box and what we're used to. Hopefully not that far out of the box. Hopefully we're on the right path. But the centurion gets it. Just like Ole at the end, he gets it. Just like the disciples at the end of Jesus' life, they finally get it. Their barriers are down and they finally understand. We have throughout the Gospels many people who were not Jewish who understood. I'm thinking about the woman at the well who was a Samaritan. She went back and she told the story and many came to believe. That's powerful. And I imagine in your lives you've seen that kind of thing. Maybe you don't witness by talking. Maybe you witness strictly by who you are and what you do for people, kindnesses that you do, and people watch you. Especially if you're a person of position, let's say, or you have people under you. You're a manager or a boss or a CEO, and your people can see what you're like and how you treat them. And they begin to wonder. When I was a youth director back in the 80s, it's aging me out pretty quickly now, isn't it, in the 80s, we had a lot of kids, and they were often dating other kids. You know how it works. And so their friends, their boyfriends or girlfriends would come to the youth group. And pretty soon, they would break up with their group, but they would stick around. They'd be part of the club. They'd be part of the group. Even if they're broken up, they'd become friends with their girlfriend or boyfriend who were at church. And I thought, this is great. And you had a couple kids in their 17, 18-year-olds getting baptized for the first time. It's not that we pushed the gospel at them, it's just that we gave them love, we welcomed them, and we showed them that the Christian life can be fun, it can be enriching, it can be meaningful. It can be something that kind of fills the hole sometimes that we feel in our lives. It also talks about those who are different from us. To be able to listen to someone who is different, tells a different story than us, who live a different story from us. Unfortunately, there are many wars throughout the world. I think there were, I don't remember the number of just civil wars and the wars that we're active in. And we wonder where the understanding is in some of these things. If they're just, you can't come to an understanding at all, and it comes to such a head that war has to happen. And you ask anybody who's in war, they don't want it. The last thing they want. They want to find a way to talk things through. Someone who's very different from us. It takes time. You just can't do it in a split second or in a month or maybe even a year. The Chinese, when they get the new project, they meet for years before it ever happens. We like to get things going. Let's get it done. It's in the fall. Let's get it done. Let's build it. Whatever that is. And so this gospel is saying that this centurion is very different. But he's got an open eyes. He's got an open heart to learn from this culture that's very different from his own. He's planted in this culture. You see people who come from different countries, like my ancestors and yours, possibly. And they come to this culture, and it's very mixed. And so the ears are open, the eyes are open. We learn a different language. We keep semblances of our own. I wish my grandparents would have kept speaking Norwegian, then I could speak another language, but now it's going to be so hard for me. But they kept an open mind about things. We have neighbors, more and more, who are Muslims or Jewish or even Buddhist or Hindu or whatever, what have you. What about their faith is important to them? What are they learning about who they are and the spiritual sense of who they are, and how does God influence them through their religions? You find an interesting fact in here that Jesus doesn't try to convert this centurion. He doesn't ask him to follow him in any way. He just heals him and commends him for his faith and moves on. And we don't know if there was ever an invitation to come and follow. And I wonder sometimes if we're so eager to witness that we just talk past someone. We want them to become Christians so badly that we refuse to see that maybe they're on their right path for God. Maybe God's got them on a different path. And we have to respect that. We have our faith, and we tell the story. We show, in essence, the pictures of our kids, and look at how beautiful our daughters and sons are, you know. But you have beautiful kids too. Mine aren't better because they're mine, but they're both beautiful kids. Jesus is working, and God's working in many different areas in this gospel. And Jesus is working with it too. He's not on his way to, and everybody who feeds the 5,000, not trying to change them to be Jewish. He just sees a need and meets it. He's a spiritual person who can see beyond that and appreciate people on their path, and yet show them what he's all about. His way is one of meaning and fulfillment and truth and all these things. To build a community, a strong community. That's tough for us with many different languages and many different people sometimes, to build a trusting community. Sometimes when the worst things happen to us, if there's some tragedy, we just go about and help no matter who we are, side by side. Years ago, when my uncle came out that he was gay, he talked about a story where he came upon a traffic accident. He pulled the guy out of the car and he wasn't breathing, so he gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and started him breathing again. And he says, I wonder what that guy would think if he knew that a gay person saved his life at that time. I mean, now it's talked about more and more, and it's becoming more acceptable, but he's different, right? But at that instant, in that emergency, it didn't matter if he was gay, if he was straight, if he was black, white, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist. You just save a life. You act through your faith, and you help people. The centurion knew that. He knew that Jesus, for some reason, had this authority to grant health and healing and much more, possibly from the Jewish elders that maybe talked about him. Maybe there were stories about Jesus brewing throughout his city of Capernaum or whatever he was, so that he could help in any way he could. He saw beyond. And that's what Jesus is saying. This centurion sees beyond the Jewish faith. He sees beyond the person to the real truth of the matter, that Jesus is the authority, that Jesus is the one who can heal. He's the one that can bring us together, and he can heal even from a distance without even seeing Jesus or having Jesus lay his hand on him. It's interesting. The doubting Thomas at the door. Let me see your hands. Let me see your side. Let me put your hands in there. Jesus said, you've seen me. But blessed are those who haven't seen and yet believe. And we have an example here. And we have an example here. We've seen bits and snapshots of Christ in our life, however that works. And we act on that. We bring it in and we say, that's Jesus. That was a Jesus moment. Or that was a moment where the Spirit held me and told me something I needed to hear or nudged me a certain way. Jesus asks us all to be like the centurion and just say, Jesus, you're the one for us. Whatever you say, we will do. And that's hard. But I look at Marty and say, at least we're trying. At least we're trying. We're not perfect. At least we're trying, And that's what we can do. We're human. We try. We keep our focus. And we keep Jesus at the center as the authority, as the one who grants and gives life and peace and community and healing and mercy and all those things to keep us on our paths. Amen.